Hello and welcome to the Employer Content Marketing Pod. I'm Chris LeCount-Harwood, your host of the podcast about employer marketing content. When the competition to attract and retain talent is fierce, organisations can't rely on just promoting their vacancies. They need to do a lot more than that. Enter employer content marketing. Joining me will be guests from inside and outside of the world of employer marketing. Let's get on with the chat. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you're listening. I'm super happy to have Nick Francis return for an episode of the Employer Content Marketing Pod. In episode 2, we discussed his book, The New Fire, Harness the Power of Video for Your Business. Hi Nick, how's it going?
Yeah, great. Not too bad. The overcast in San Francisco, which, is not quite in the California playbook. But we're all right. Just kind of really getting used to just living at home now, really.
Day 3046.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And just the sort of sameness and kind of like, I don't know, monotony has like such a sort of negative undertone, but like it ultimately, it is, there's a lot of good stuff happening. We're very lucky to, have our family and our space and stuff, because there's a lot of people who don't have that. But it's funny how your life just starts to kind of accelerate away when you don't have the kind of breaks and stuff. Anyway.
So just for those people who may not know and haven't listened to the previous episode that we talked about your book, could you just give a quick intro into you and your book for us?
Sure. So I am a video producer, filmmaker, I guess, once upon a time. And I set up Casual Films with a friend of mine from university. We've now grown to London, New York, LA, and San Francisco. We specialize in employer communications, makes up about half of our work. The rest of it's kind of B2B, B2C. About 3 years ago, I thought I should write a book to kind of communicate a bit around how video has changed for businesses. There seemed to be a real knowledge gap in the this kind of senior level of a lot of the companies we were working with. There's the sort of practitioners who've kind of grown up with it and who really get it, but they kind of struggled to sell it in to the people quite often who were holding the purse strings, because they just didn't appreciate how the role of video had changed. So I started writing a book, and it was an incredible experience, just because I don't think I appreciated how much I would learn in writing a book. I kind of figured that to write a book, you just kind of like write down the stuff but it's an incredibly valuable experience to kind of like straighten out your ideas and kind of really make you think about, what do you think about, how to write a brief. And, it's one thing to have a sort of like a kind of a working knowledge or a professional insight onto something like that. But it's another thing to have to kind of put your kind of, what's your number one point? What are your top 5 points, on how to select an audience, how to select someone to feature in your film, for example. It's sort of, it's a very valuable experience. Anyway, so
there's a great body of work. So a lot of effort, clearly went into it. And as I think I said in the last episode, the kind of definitely feels like a sidekick to anyone who wants to, really think about the why, the what, and the how of video for their business. So, in particular, I mean, we could have chatted for much, much longer than the 40 or so minutes we did. I think there's a particular part of the book when I was reading it, I found particularly interesting, which is this thing you wrote about brands becoming broadcasters. So, what does being a broadcaster mean? When you're writing that part of the book?
Well, I think so. There's a really interesting. There was a Austrian economist in the 19th century called Ludwig von Mises, and he wrote about the idea that in the mind of the consumer, you can't separate the value that marketing adds from the value of the utility of the core product. And the example used is that if you go to a restaurant and they haven't cleaned the loos properly or the loos are backed up, it doesn't matter if you've got Raymond Blanc cooking, 2 Michelin star food. If the whole place smells of like excrement, then you're just not going to enjoy your meal.
Yeah, it's going to take the edge off, isn't it? Yeah,
it will take the edge off. And I guess where I think when you talk about brands becoming broadcasters, what that really means is understanding that video is and your communications more broadly like have the potential to add so much value that it's important that businesses consider it almost like an additional product. So it's like, for BMW, for example, or for a car production company, yes, of course they produce cars and they produce all the spare parts and they produce all the bits and pieces, but they also can enhance the value of that product in the same way that, they might put extra effort into the stitching of the seats. They should put extra effort into the way that they communicate and build the value of the brand and the perception of the brand for the end consumer. And, and that works across all products, all businesses, whether you're a business services firm, a bank, a car manufacturer, the opportunity for you to increase value for your consumer is such that you need to think of it in the way that a traditional broadcaster would. And I guess the reason why I say brands have become broadcasters, and the reason why that is such a concept is because of it's that idea that your content is now an element of your product in the same way that, for the BBC, for CNN, for, a traditional broadcaster, that is their product. And that's really what that means.
So what does it actually, kind of to break it down a little bit, what does it actually mean, I suppose, to be a broadcaster? We see broadcasters in various different, guises around the world in our lives, but what particular things would brands need to do to behave like a broadcaster?
So I guess it's an understanding of video content and the production of video content as a process, as opposed to sort of an individual transaction. I think historically, marketing content was produced in campaigns. So you would have a campaign that launched, and there'd be a big launch and big fanfare, and it might go on TV, it might be on the radio, it might be in print or wherever, but it would then ebb away, and then you'd have the next campaign start up. And I think to really build value on a longer term, you need to be creating content, as potentially sharing a piece of content a week, maybe even a piece of content a day. But it's a case of building an audience. So if you look at a traditional broadcaster, they understand that they have to create a lifelong relationship with their consumers. So the BBC will start off, and obviously the BBC, they're massive flagship multi-billion pound enterprise, but it's kind of instructive to look at them, because you sort of say, well, you can see that they sort of start off with CBBS, for tiny little tots, and then kind of work up and then they start creating news round, which then engages the kind of younger people in the concept of news, and then they can then move on to the 6 o'clock news, and so if you look at all the streams of content that run through all the different broadcasts and pieces of content the BBC create, they're trying to create this kind of lifelong relationship. Now, obviously, if you're a automotive manufacturer, or even for our audience, if you are looking to recruit tech savvy grads, for example, you need to they will move through a process through the year and potentially across a number of different years. And I guess what you need to try and think about is how does the content that you serve someone who is still at school but potentially looking to get a job in the future, how does that content differ from the content that you maybe serve them when they've gone through university and they're now actually starting to look for a job? And I think it's having that kind of longer term view on it will lead to just far better results.
Actually, that's a good point, really, because when you think about it, when people are people leaving school and considering their next steps to go into university or go into an apprenticeship, there is a natural I suppose, cycle to what they do over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And especially at university, I found it where, just go, right, well, we need to raise awareness. And some clients being very keen to raise awareness from year one, not just because they have maybe an internship or work placement they have to offer, but they want to make sure that when they get to final year, that they know about that company and will then consider them for graduate opportunities. But the challenge is obviously that thing, like with any kind of sector, like say with consumer, is that thing about, well, but we need to sell something. We need products to sell. We need vacancies to fill. And so it's about balancing those two things out, isn't it?
100%. Yeah,
definitely. That challenge is, that's an important challenge to tackle. I think that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're looking to build trust with your audience ultimately, and they say, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's maybe a bit of a. They say that you need to have 7 touch points with a consumer for them to buy off you. Now, obviously, some people will be more motivated than others, and that's kind of really is a rule of thumb. So, maybe, it's a bit more for some, a bit less for others. But like, it does give you a kind of a feel for the amount of contact time that a prospective buyer or prospective candidate might have to have. And, the longer you have been a presence in their mind, the easier it will be when you switch, because you're kind of raising awareness, and then you might kind of put in like a sales activation message, which should be sort of like, apply now, or, you're trying to like drive a very direct action, having built a certain amount of trust. And like, if you manage to raise the trust up enough, then when you put in that sales activation message, or, application, the kind of job application message, then people are far more likely to go for it.
You're talking about content marketing, which you refer to in the book as well. It's that thing about providing that value to people. So when you do get to the stage of wanting them to purchase something or apply for something, they see you as a trusted source because you have provided them with content that's going to inform them, that's going to educate them, that's going to entertain them, either positively or negatively, through stories, to just being there as a utility for them. And if you're there as a valued source, then when it comes to then applying for something, then you would consider those because their awareness is much higher than say other organizations.
Absolutely.
And
you've added enough value for them, and that value can be in a number of different ways. You kind of always building trust.
Why do you think that trust is even more important now, or with the rise of say social, for example?
I guess everyone is just trying to find their way through, and I think people thought that the internet was going to, and funny enough, one of the things I talk about in the book is this idea that the internet will create this the age of transparency, whereby it's no longer possible for companies to lie or prevaricate, and it's harder for politicians to lie, and and I guess like everyone's looking for information that they can trust and they can believe in, and the world that we live in, it feels very uncertain. And we look for things that we can believe in all around us, and I think one of the really interesting things that is happening is that businesses can play so much more of a role than just being the place where people go to get money at the end of the month. And if you sort of think through your entire the lifespan of your relationship with a company, like it kind of begins, you may have bought products off the company that you're applying to work for. You may you may have read like a white paper or something they produce, like, all these little touch points of kind of are building your level of trust and understanding and belief in the business. And at a time when, we're looking for security and solidity and, ultimately, things to believe in and, and I think this is a great opportunity for businesses to play that role. And and the interesting thing about this whole Corona crisis is like, I don't think it's just sped everything up.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in an amazing way. Like it's not. I don't think we're kind of seeing this like massive revolution, but like people working from home and stuff. Yes, of course, this has happened and evolved so much faster, but it was kind of happening already. So, yeah, I don't know. And like companies playing a role and being, sources of, comfort sounds sort of a bit soft, but like, comfort and, and security is an extremely important thing.
Definitely, I think reassurance in when you're surrounded by a whole flood of content, whole waves of content, and there's obviously fake news and not sure what is right and what is wrong, and wanting to find that kind of trusted rock of reassurance, I think is really important. And actually, it is interesting really now where brands are thinking, whether employer brands or consumer brands, what do we say when we don't want to really be pushing our product or our vacancy, and actually for me that is content marketing. It's like, okay, well, we know we want to get some sort of business value out of it, but what do we do if we're not starting off by saying, can you please buy something off us, or can you please apply for something? So I think that as well, maybe in terms of mindset, is going to be hopefully moving things more quickly in terms of the role of content in marketing. I think it's I'm sure there will be a certain amount of going back to business as usual, but also there'll be a decent chunk of things changing, I think, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I get the key thing is like, how long are we going to stay at home? And I think once you get to 6 weeks, that's where, that's how long they say that it takes to learn a new habit. And there are kind of lots of things that we've sort of done because we've always done them, which we probably won't go back to doing, or certainly won't go back to doing in the same way. I was talking to one of our members of staff yesterday, actually, and he was saying that they had a beer on their stoop outside with some of their neighbours, and he found it so hard to socialise with people.
Wow.
Because he's just so used to just talking to his girlfriend and talking to people over Zoom. So yeah, it's amazing how quickly we kind of but then also obviously we can evolve back. So.
In the book you talk about YouTube's content structure, which I'm a big fan of, and it's really good to see that in the book of hero, hub, and hygiene or helpers is the nice way of saying it. You just kind of talk us through that model and why you included it in the book.
Sure. So I guess they wanted to create a framework by which people who wanted to create a kind of content marketing process could form the different types of content that they produce, and ultimately it's based around the different ways that people find content online. So hero content is your sort of big, splashy, big rock stuff. You see the picture, it's kind of really cool. It's like, so Volvo Trucks, if you look at the Volvo Trucks YouTube channel, they were really good kind of earlier on when YouTube first came out with this. They did a lot of work. You may remember the Jean-Claude Van Damme between the two trucks doing the splits. Yeah. So that was like broadcast. So that was like a key element of their kind of hero content. And then the idea is that would then you'd see that and then go to their YouTube channel and then you'd have the hygiene content, the hub content, which is like all of your like sort of weekly magazines. So it's like, this is what's happening. It's kind of far more time specific. And the idea is that that's like the sort of the mainstream of the content flowing through the channel. And then the other way that people would find content is through searching for their help content. So which so it could be like, how to reverse an 18-wheeler truck, or how to check the oil pressure, or all these different things that like people would just search, and then they find the channel that way, and then that's like another route into the hub content, which people then subscribe for.
So that actually requires a total flip, doesn't it, in terms of that hygiene help, a flip in mindset of going, actually, I know everyone talks about how it's important to think about the audience, but so many brands often think first about, well, what do we want to say? So actually by going, let's flip it around and go, what is going to be of value to this audience? If they were searching on YouTube, because it is still the second biggest search engine in the world, what would they be searching for? And then you create your content off the back of that.
Exactly.
So it's, and obviously with YouTube, it's that kind of hygiene help content is a massive, massive part of,
massive.
What they're about.
Yeah, and like video is just such, if ever I need to do something that I don't know how to do, like video is just a way, way better way of learning, and you can put in a little search for, any, like all sorts. I think everyone's been doing quite a lot of baking and cooking recently. So I got quite into like looking at, how to make various different breads and stuff, which is quite kind of cool. But yeah, video, like it just works so well. And then, once you've done your search for, whatever this piece of help content might be, then that's just another route in. So yeah, either you see the big hero splashy stuff that kind of looks really exciting, maybe has a really interesting thumbnail, and it kind of gets you to click on it, and you go in that way, or you kind of go in through the research. And the idea is, over time, you can grow your viewership through the two different. So your kind of the hero content is far more like traditional advertising, where it's a bit more spiky, and then your kind of hub is just ongoing, just sort of slowly building an audience. So yeah, no, it's good. It's it's kind of stood the test of time as well as a methodology. The key thing is to think of it as a process as opposed to a campaign or a transaction. And iterate, which is not a kind of a core part of the YouTube method, like hero help hygiene methodology. But its key is like just look at the things that work well. Where what like the fantastic thing about the online environment when you're kind of posting content is you can sort of see the things that resonate. And then just do more of that, do less of the stuff that doesn't, and then keeping your cadence up as well is key. So maybe make a goal of doing a piece of content a week, maybe even once a month. Just getting a little, could maybe do with being a little bit more regular than that.
Your point about cadence, I think, is really important. That consistency, so that actually you are dropping into people's news feeds, which they're swiping through very, very quickly. There's a huge fierce competition for attention in social media news feeds, that you're turning up in people's subscriptions in their inboxes or on YouTube. But there is a challenge there, isn't there, about, well, maybe somebody might be thinking, well, does that mean I've got to be producing like really top-notch, very high production video content all the time? What's the way of addressing that?
You need to reversion, sort of atomize the content as much as possible, like just simply it's just reversioning. So you create your main piece of content. There's this the idea of kind of like big rock content, and maybe we can come on to that in a minute, but like this idea that like every piece of content you spend time producing, you should be doing little posts around, so that you're kind of trying to make sure that you have all your different social channels covered. And you may be like you maybe post it and then hope to draw people back onto your website so that they can then sort of access the main piece of content that you produced. Or, it could be your YouTube channel, it could be a podcast, but whatever it is, you don't just put it up there. You're kind of like sharing it across all the different channels. And it is just a bit more work, basically. It shouldn't hopefully be a huge amount more production. It's just very simple edits. And it's one of the things that's like really changed in the way that we deliver for our clients as casual, is that, once upon a time we might deliver like a single big kind of, I sort of talk about this, the difference between the horse and the chickens. Just in kind of top line, when we used to play Would You Rather, one of the absolute killer Would You Rathers was would you rather fight a chicken the size of a horse or 100 horses the size of chickens? It's a tough one. It's a tough one because like one peck from a chicken the size of a horse and you're in big trouble. But 100 horses the size of chickens, like that's going to be a real trouble. Anyway, so it's like,
I love it. Yeah,
but this does have a content marketing angle in that we used to create like a single horse-sized chicken. So it was like a big piece of content that would just it would go on the homepage. It would be played at all the careers fairs, at like all the exhibitions and stuff, and people would watch it and be like, "Oh wow, it's so great!" And it kind of like it communicated your message with like a single punch. And I think now it's kind of a case of more like you've got to create 100. It's the same volume of content, if you like, or same production effort focus, but instead of it being like one big 40, 50, 80,000 pound dollar film, it's just blown out across maybe 20, 25 different outputs. So we will you doing sort of 15-second cuts, 30-second cuts, 45-second cuts, hero films, breakdown of all the different interviewees of all the different films, and just trying to create as much content as you possibly can. Because the fact is the audience are so transient. If you just if you spend all your money on a single film, they're just going to like whip past it. You're trying to pause the thumb, right? And unfortunately, you're more likely to pause someone's thumb if you're creating 100 pieces of content, all of which support each other, than you are if you create one and you spend all the money on that.
Definitely, it's I think it's easy to hope and expect that someone's going to look through, a whole video of something that a team has spent so much time and effort doing, but actually, that can be missed. And so, actually repeating and repurposing, I think, is definitely really important. I like what you talked about in terms of big rock content, where you have your kind of your core piece of content that then has lots of different bits that come out of it, and that's just down to what we talked about in the last episode, was just down to having good planning. I'm doing stuff at the moment actually where we're looking at repurposing existing videos, cutting those down, but also seeing what other bits of content we can get from that video in terms of stills, quotes from those videos. And of course, there's a thing about turning those videos into blog posts as well, and the role of employee-generated video content that takes the people in those videos, that featured in those videos, and then lets them film their own content as well. So there's I like the idea of big rock. I first heard it on LinkedIn talking about big rock content, but it's I think it's a good way of approaching it, that's for sure.
Well, it's good. It sort of it makes it so. The idea is that that you're taking something which would traditionally, like it is like a kind of traditional campaign, but then you just slice it and dice it so many ways. You've got the run into it, you've got the event itself, and then you can kind of cut and repurpose that like almost endlessly. And so you could take a video, take videos, you could take stills from the videos for Instagram, You could take 15-second cuts, also, put them on Instagram, take a 30-second cut, put it on Facebook. You could take the audio and cut a podcast or a series of podcasts and put them out across all the different podcast platforms. So like from one, if you want to get creative, you've got the single event which costs the money, and it's something I always say to our clients is like, sending people out with cameras costs money. Like it just takes time and it costs money. And so what we want to try and do is make sure that we get you the maximum amount of mileage that we possibly can for that. So, because an editor can bang out, 4 or 5 different social cuts in an afternoon, like no bother. If not more, obviously depending on the complexity. And so, very quickly you could have, 15, 20, 30 different cut bits, and then you got, as I said, podcast stills. So, and also, all of them creating a kind of funnel that's kind of drawing people back to your kind of the main hub of your content.
You kind of on the broadcast side of things, so kind of brands behaving like broadcasters. I like that approach because actually what it does is it's going, well, traditionally advertising was about placing ads in between the content, between the programming content. But actually what this is about is behaving like a broadcaster is really about creating that content that usually sits in between the ads. And so actually if you start thinking like that about, if I'm thinking like someone who's planning programs, what content is going to be entertaining and educational and inspiring to those people who are, going to consume my content. And I think also particularly now that we can reach people so much more easily through social, we don't have to purely rely on the big media outlets, who have the key, that's the gateway to all of their audiences. They are definitely important, but you can go direct to market yourself so much more easily than you could do 5, more like 10, 15 years ago. So I think that's really good. And when you think about, well, if I'm going to be reaching whoever I want, or whichever my target audience is, I really need to think about what content is going to be of value to them, as opposed to just slinging ads at them. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's a really exciting and interesting time actually to be working in this area because of that shift, and just banging out sales messages, which was kind of like where the market was just it just doesn't work anymore. You got people have got there's ad blocking. Obviously YouTube Premium you pay for and you don't have to watch any of the ads. So you got to be creating stuff that people are going to actively seek out, and they're going to miss if it wasn't there.
Yeah, definitely.
So
when brands as broadcasters, what examples of you've got an example of great broadcaster, a great brand broadcaster?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the sort of the real archetype is Red Bull, but then the problem with that is like it's a bit like saying, oh, well, Apple are really good at branding. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's kind of almost fatuous because they're in such a sort of different league. I mean, and they're also incredibly lucky that they are promoting action sports at a time when the visual and dynamic is just so incredibly favored by the platforms that we all access. I know, having worked with Red Bull, that they're very keen to move beyond just like crazy teens and 20-somethings throwing themselves off jumps, and they want their kind of Red Bull gives you wings concept to stand for like the sort of metaphysical as well as the physical. So like they've got a couple of chess champions who are Red Bull athletes, for example. And then also just looking at kind of like everyday people who are kind of going out and looking and working. and doing really special things. So like they're trying to evolve from that. I guess like there's, if you look at like there's the Goldman Sachs. They did their talks at Goldman. I think it was called Talks at Goldman, which was really just really interesting. I think the key thing. I think the brands that do it really well are the ones, and what I try to talk about in the book is like if you can define what your purpose is as a business and then really bring it to life through the content that you share. So this idea, Rebel, they they enable people to live life to the full. And if you look at all their content, like that is what it does. Like for BMW, it's they like it's all about the enjoyment of driving and the love of kind of precision and so you look at all their content and it all kind of aligns with that. And the best brands are the ones who are like best able to like bring their purpose to life and their kind of their why to life, if you like. Who else? Let's see. Who I really like. I mean, like another one of our clients, GoDaddy over here, have been putting a lot of thought and time and effort into like how they communicate around their the people who use their software. So it's all about kind of small business owners and telling their stories and kind of enabling people to kind of live their entrepreneurial dreams, which is and they do it really, really effectively. And some of them are more charitable angles, some of them are more kind of like small businesses, but it all is serving this concept of like the sort of enablement of entrepreneurial magic, and I think they did it really well.
Yeah, they've clearly dedicate a lot of time, effort, and love into what they do. The Made in America series I really liked, and you guys are involved in, what is it, Icons? Is it Icons of Their Tribe?
Yeah,
which is tapping into those entrepreneurial stories, and I think they do have the more hygiene and help content in there and how to buy and sell a domain.
I mean,
for a profit. But you've got to have a combination of two, a la the YouTube content structure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it's really, you can see it really clearly there. They've got a lot of their a lot of the site and a lot of the traffic is dedicated to how to register your business, how to set up a website, how to pick a logo, really basic stuff that people are all, everyone will be searching. And, because everyone's on Google, or 93 or whatever it is, 90 something % of people are searching on Google, and YouTube is a Google asset. They said, video is favored. And so if you search how to set up how to register my company, then you can go through to GoDaddy, and someone there will tell you. So that's one way of doing it. But then they've also got like the Made in America series, which is just it's just really great hero content, which draws people in another way. So.
Yeah, definitely. And from a kind of bringing it back to employer marketing, so what kind of video content do you think employer marketers need to be doing to become a broadcaster?
I always go back, and I sort of sometimes feel like I sound a bit like a broken record, but like if you talk to your prospective audience and understand the things that are their concerns, and you can do that directly by talking to talk to your staff and understand what are their concerns, what do they want to know, and then you can create content around that. I guess the key thing is to think about your purpose, think about your EVP, employee value proposition, and work out how you can communicate. What are the cleanest ways that you can communicate around those, and think about it as a process as opposed to a campaign or a transaction.
I've seen examples of over the years. So like EY, they do put time and effort into kind of, especially around the school leaver market, creating content. Some of that video that's going to help people make the right decision. It's not all just about come and apply for us.
100%.
There's a certain amount of them living their employer brand as opposed to just having it there as a message. Also, Rolls-Royce won an award, a RAD award, back in January for the apprenticeship series, which is really nice. It included videos around, myth busting around apprenticeships. Apprentices don't earn much money, and they're like laughing, going, "Well, actually, when I started working, I was on this amount of money, and when I can afford to get a car and all that, while some of my friends were studying and having to pay a lot of money to do that at university." So I think there's some, and I'll drop some examples in, along with GoDaddy and Red Bull. I'll drop some examples in the episode description of this for sure. I think, but as we said at the beginning, I think there's definitely, you think about it from an early career perspective, there's so much information, like kind of hygiene and help information you can give people, that there's definitely space to fill there in terms of content that can be created, especially video. And when it comes to those kind of inspiring stories, or those stories that people can have a connection with because they feel that they are in the same position as that person was, those stories of someone starting out in their career and feeling daunted by something, or feeling really optimistic by something, or going through a challenge of a recruitment process is all very powerful content that all ties into that thing about what kind of content should we be creating if we were a broadcaster. So I'll drop some examples in. There. So obviously, like GoDaddy, Red Bull, EY, they have time, and especially the Red Bulls and GoDaddies spend big budgets on behaving like broadcasters. How can employer marketers kind of start to turn the dial more towards I'm a broadcaster status?
So we've done a lot of work with Marriott hotels in the US, and they have created, we did a podcast series, which was we backed with video. So we were able to, or like at video animation. So we just ring around various different key members of staff in the senior management and talk to them about, what was happening in the company. And then use animation, like very relatively simple animation, to then take those audio assets and turn them into animations with like little people speaking. And it kind of, it was fun because obviously, you've got all the senior people in the company kind of create, as like animated characters, which was amusing in itself. But also just like it meant from a production standpoint, it's really easy because it's like it's like a telephone call or like recording a podcast. And it just meant that they were then able to, start like have this kind of hub thread that ran through the content marketing within like across the Marriott group. So, it can be like as simple as that. I guess, again, it's like do the work to understand what people, what are people concerned about? What do they want to learn about? It may be beyond the obvious, which is why it's so important to kind of do a bit of research up front. And I think, the very best projects are the ones where the lion's share of the work happens before anyone almost even picks up a pen, but certainly before anyone picks up a camera or a microphone. Think longer term, like have a view to how you're going to build this over 12 to 18 months, and be prepared to iterate and look at the things that work, look at the things that don't work, understand what are the things that people want to know and how are they finding you, and how they find that information, and then kind of create content that can sit in those different places.
I suppose the journey through education and through a career is a long one. So it's nice to have some organisations there, either really close to you as employers, or distant as in brands you're aware of, to kind of take you on that journey or be there for you on that journey. In fact, it feels like it's actually even more relevant to employer marketing than it is to consumer. Where actually it is so important to. It's such careers, education, and also career is such a big part of everyone's lives. Which again, what's happening now, I think, is emphasising that.
Yeah.
So actually, I think this approach is, and the whole broadcaster, brands as broadcaster, employer brands as broadcasters is, I think, a really good thing, to focus on and pick up and just start saying in meetings, okay, we're doing something. What if we were a broadcaster? Let's think about what kind of content
what
we
does that
could
look
create.
like? I mean, the other thing is, like, in a sense, I like the idea of brands as broadcasters. I mean, I guess because it's got the alliteration on the one hand, but this idea that, like, it's like an additional product. But in a sense, what the real value of the online world is in narrowcasting. So historically, the broadcasters, you put stuff on TV and it's like a scattergun. Yeah. So TV advertising historically, so you might put your advert in a certain TV show because you knew there was a certain demographic who were going to be the majority of people who were watching it. What you can do now is find a niche and really create great content for a specific niche. And you can almost not make things too focused. In fact, funny, this broadcast I did yesterday, the guy, and obviously in the US they call it a niche, and so they said niches get the riches. So just
Brilliant.
which didn't niches get the riches. But if you you can be extremely niche, and as kind of Seth Godin talks about he's got a great book called This Is Marketing, and he talks about, like, make your marketing or make your product perfect for one person, and you're like the smallest viable group that you possibly can, because if you can make it perfect for one person, then like more people will love it. Whereas, like, it can be problematic if you start to think about, like, oh well, we're just going to make this film for everyone, and then it kind of doesn't really resonate for anyone. And so, like, when you're approaching your content, is like, try to understand, like, specifically, like, who is it who is going to absolutely love this, who's going to find this incredibly valuable, and just be really, really focused on that. That's this idea of, like, yes, of course we want brands to think as broadcasters, but actually we can narrowcast and be incredibly focused about who our audience are, which is it's a great thing, and it should kind of inform some of your thinking.
Yeah, because we know we can reach people. Whoever we want, we can reach these days. Seeing over the years, seeing kind of RFPs come in, and sometimes those RFPs going, we wanting to reach this audience, a hard to reach audience, and actually it's not that they're hard to reach. It's you just got to reach them in the right way with the right content. So we are blessed with the technology we have these days to be able to reach people to the absolute nth degree. But I think that's a whole other episode, perhaps. So
for sure,
maybe we do that another time.
We can do that another time.
But great. It's been really good again chatting with you, Nick.
Yeah,
and,
cheers, Chris.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely, real pleasure.
It's bank holiday, Easter weekend coming up, so Thursday's a new Friday, and staying in is definitely the new going out. That's for sure. So
Amen. Yeah.
Well, have a good time, and be in touch.
Thanks, mate. Stay safe, and thanks for having me. Speak to you again soon. Cheers.
Bye. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow or subscribe for the latest episode drops. And don't forget to get in touch if you want to contribute.